Travis Waddell is with ESC Region 10, and he is one of the ESC specialists who has a particular interest in helping the districts get the money that they deserve. So he's going to come up here and clarify further what you've been listening to this morning.
Thank you so much. How many people do I have in here are building principals or assistant principals? All right, y'all are, believe it or not, y'all are the most important factor in there. The CTE people pretty much know what I'm going to say. A lot of my CTE directors are really keyed into funding, so they understand how important it is, but it seems like the break-off we're seeing is at the administrative level because they don't understand just how much of an impact it can have. And I'll give you an example we start with. Back in 08, 09, when we went through our huge funding debacle, y'all remember that? Where we started cutting funding. What are some of the first processes that people cut out of their schools? Electives. And they just piled the CTE electives in there, not understanding there are 18 classes, 1 English, 5 math, and 12 sciences, and there's actually 14 PEIMS codes when you count research and design. That gives you 3 different PEIMS codes. So there are 18 classes with 20 PEIMS codes that allows for students to earn core credit. Now, there's a caveat to that. One of the big problems we have in the state of Texas, it's not a big problem for us, it's a big problem for your counselor, is that when you use those CTE classes and you have a student athlete that's going to go NCAA, there seems to be a hiccup. It's really pretty simple. The counselors need to go to the NCAA website and populate their school's information to accept those as core credit. They have to fill it out that that's a core credit class. It's really that simple. So that's one consideration to make. If you're going to be using CTE classes as core credit classes, you want to make sure that your NCAA information is up to date so your student athletes aren't left out for their scholarships, because when you send up at the end of the June to populate for your students to go and receive their scholarships, if those classes are not held as core, then they cannot go to that school. So that's something to consider. And I'm putting that in real general terms. There's a little bit more to it, but just so you know enough to go and tell your counselor, hey, let's get those courses. We have uploaded onto our the live binder that sheet with the 18, right, with the PEIMS codes. So if you want to, you can go download the document, and it'll have all 18 classes, 1 English, 5 math, and 12 sciences. So let me get on my little soapbox here. If I ever went back to a campus right now and they installed me as the building principal, I'd be like, how many English 4 classes do we have? And I'd say, how many people really want to learn Shakespeare? If you're an English teacher, please do not throw anything up here. How many people want to learn Shakespeare, or my personal favorite, Beowulf, versus business English? If you were sitting at the beginning of your senior year right now, and you know what you were going to do for a living, and I said you have an opportunity to take pre-calculus or trig or statistics and risk management, what do you think would probably be would emphasize better for your career path? I would dare say for me, it would be statistics and risk management versus pre-cal or trig. But that's not the case for everyone, because then that goes back to your counselors. If you're an administrator, of having that conversation, that your counselors need to make sure that they understand what each kid's future plans are. Because if they're going to go to the McCombs Business School at UT Austin, you need to make sure that they're meeting all the requirements to get in the door there. And it might be a high-level math class that's not statistics and risk management. So you have to look at that as well. There's all these considerations to be made. But this is the list. I love this list. So for English 4, you can give business English. Well, and you think about that. Every time you add 6 kids to a class, you get 1 FTE. The average FTE, would you agree, is worth about $2,000 for a year, for the whole year. So for every FTE you add, depending on, now it really does depend on how much money you make for seeded funding, and I can show you that. You can find that in your summary of finance. But the idea is for every one of these classes you change, you start to populate more FTEs. And the more FTEs you get, the more CTE funding you get. Now there is a little catch to that too. If you're going to change English 4 to business English, you're now going to have more money to spend in the CTE area. So 58% of that funding has to go to CTE. 42% can be casted out. I always recommend you go 62%. And the reason is I'm going to go a little further here. When they come into your district and they say you need to make sure you're utilizing 58% of your CTE funding every August, they do it on a 3-year overview. They take it on a 3-year scale. So it's not just 1 year that could get you in trouble. It's a consideration of 3 years. So if you were to go and do a self-audit and figure out last year you spent 56%, well, as long as you get 60% spent this year, next year it's going to even out. So you need to make sure that over a 3-year average, you're spending 58% or more of your CTE funding on CTE. And you can spend it on salaries. You could, people who are really, really good at this know that if they have a teacher who's split that teaches both core and teaches our electives and CTE, can take that salary and break it down by class periods. And you could pay a percentage for the CTE and a percentage for the core or the elective classes. Your counselors as well. If your counselors are spending time with students in a CTE process and they're counseling them on career readiness and things of that nature, then you can utilize portions of that to pay the counselors. You don't want to pay the whole counselor's salary because not everything they're doing is CTE. So you'd have to be very careful. Once again, talk to your finance manager. Don't leave here and go, Travis said I could do it, so I'm going to do it. No, don't do that, because I don't want both of us to end up with mud on our face. Always consult with your business office to make sure you're doing that correct. Now, like she had said, if you don't think the business office is up to speed, make sure you get your data sources out so you can show them where that's written, where it's in writing, how those funding sources are supposed to work. Are there any questions currently anybody has, or any ideas anybody have they'd like to clarify? Yes, sir.
I would just like to give a brief description of certifications that teachers have to teach this.
That is a wonderful question. I'm glad you asked that. You'd be amazed and surprised. And I'm going to tell you where you find that is chapter 231. There are a lot of spreadsheets going around. Anybody got a spreadsheet? Anybody got a spreadsheet they look at for certifications? One of those real pretty ones that somebody made in a Word document or something like that? Throw it in the garbage. Please, just toss it right in the garbage. It's the worst thing you can use. You can use it as a basic idea to get you where you're at in the ballpark. But I'll give you an example for mathematics, applications, apps, and natural resources. Let's go to TEA's website. We're going to look at the certifications for math, apps, natural resources. The reason I want to do that's 85% algebra in the TEKS and 15% geometry. If I was going to be remediating a kid to pass the EOC or get ready for college, and I knew they were weak in math, I'd probably put them in ag math before I'd put them in math models. For one, I'm going to get more money. On top of that, research has proven you have a higher attendance rate, a higher college completion and entry rate, and a higher graduation rate for kids who enroll in CTE classes. This is John Ellis from TEA. John Ellis is the person that I call with all my problems. So he's going to take us to certification.
You go to Texas Educators, then you go to certification rules, then you go to Texas Administrative Code currently in effect, and we find chapter 231, and under 231 it's going to be subchapter E, grades 9 through 12 assignments.
Now, John, if you would, could you go back out one and I'll show you why I like to do that. Click right on chapter 231 itself. And then scroll down, just start scrolling down, and we'll get down into those subchapters because then it gives you the classes. It's the route.
It's easier.
Yes, sir. And then now take a note, if you would. Chapter 231 is where you will find teacher certifications. Chapter 233.13 is where you will find the 13 is without experience, and 233.14 is with experience. In other words, in order to earn a certification in CTE, you have to have experience if it's in 233.14. If it's in 233.13, it lists those certifications that do not require experience, and I'll expand on that in a minute. There we are, ag math and applications in agriculture and food and natural resources. These are the certifications. So most of us have teachers who are mathematics 7 through 12, 8 through 12 on our campuses. And the concept is this: every CTE teacher that's certified on your campus, you want teaching a CTE class, and any teacher who is core certified that you can get into a CTE class, you want teaching a CTE class. Now, there are some other requirements if you look at B. So let's just use 6. If we have a teacher on our campus that wants to teach this class that's certified in 8 through 12, we could assign them, but there is an addition to that. They would have to go and take a course that is assigned. It says all teachers assigned to this course shall participate in a Texas Education Agency approved training. So our gateway courses, we have 9 CTE gateway courses plus an additional 2, one being CTE 101 and the other one being the science safety course. For this one, if it's a math teacher, we highly encourage that they take the CTE 101, which is a 4 CPE hour class that ingrains them into CTE, along with the actual coursework for ag, math, and natural resources. So there is an additional, and that's where that B comes in. So when you go and look in chapter 231 and you see an additional requirement at the bottom That'll send you to that page.
CTE 101 is required for math and science teachers teaching CTE courses. It's recommended for the CTE certified teachers.
CTE 101 is a very informative course. I promise you, if you take it, no matter how long you've been in CTE, literally, if you've been in it for a year or 30 years, you will learn something in that course.
So the gateway is open to all your teachers. It's online resources. It's free. This is where we have all of our 9 PDs for our courses that we have that get a math or science credit that we talked about earlier. So if you go to a math or science certification course and it has this, all teachers assigned shall take this Texas Education Agency approved training, they're talking about in Texas Gateway. And so like Carol was saying, if it's the math teacher that's going to teach one of our CTE courses, then they have to take CTE 101 along with the training that's in Texas Gateway for that particular course. Even though they're certified in math already, they still have to take the training. Same way with the CTE teacher, they have to take the training for the course in Texas Gateway. And in this case, it's a math, so that's all that would be required for a CTE teacher. If it was a science course, then the CTE teacher would take the high school safety course for science. Yes, Pete.
Yeah, I have a question, maybe.
Hey, when you look on Texas Gateway, just want to cover this real quick. You can just check the box that says CTE, and it'll bring up all the PD that's for CTE. Each course is broken down into 6 parts. Each part is gets you a 15 credit hour, CPE credits. So if the teacher completes this, it doesn't go on their certification record. They hold it. They turn it into the district for records, for documentation if they were to get audited. So they have to complete all 6 parts to complete the course. And that's, if you just scroll, I just searched for CTE, and it just starts with advanced animal science, and it just keeps going. So that the teacher can just go in and click each part, finish it, print it out, print out their own certificate.